the Hells Angels comes before anything and anybody.
Absolutely.
Mother, father.
Right.
So what does that mean? You know, like, how would it come before your mother or father? Give me an example of that.
I walk in redemption.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Sit Down with Michael Franzese. Hope everybody is doing well. All is very good, very blessed on this end. And as always, I give God all the praise, honor, and glory, and thanksgiving for that. Always will. Today I have a very special guest. His name is George Christie. George and I go back about 30 some odd years. We first met in Terminal Island, California, when I was in prison. And in Terminal Island, there's two yards. There's the North Yard and the South Yard. The North Yard was really, at that time, they didn't really have a federal jail out here. So a lot of people that were pre-trial would stay in the North Yard. They'd pick them up every morning, take them to their court case or whatever. And then you had the South Yard, which was mostly for the residents. I was in the South Yard. Everybody starts out in the North Yard, but then hopefully you move your way back to the South Yard, which was much better. I was in the South, George was in the North, but you're allowed to, intermingle. You go, to both places easily. No separation there. And we met and enjoyed the guy very much, very respectful guy. He was respected in there. And he was at one time the head of the Hells Angels chapter out here in California. George lives out here now. He spent some time in Spain, but he's back out here in California now. And I had a great sit down with him. He's a great guy. Met with him and his wife, and we just went over things. And we had a real good time. And I think you'd enjoy the conversation. A couple of months back, I think I did a video about the Hells Angels and about the similarities between their group, their organization, and Cosa Nostra, my former organization. And I think you're going to enjoy that. George and I talked about that, very conversational. As a matter of fact, he asked me some questions, and so we went back and forth. I think you're going to enjoy it. George is, just a great person. He's pretty well known out here in these circles. He's now not a member of the Hells Angels anymore. He left that life as I left mine behind. And so we had a very interesting conversation. So with no further hesitation, here's my guest, George Christie. So George, it's been, I would say about 35 years before we last have seen each other under a little different circumstances, I would say.
Much different circumstances. I was down there at Terminal Island. You were there as well at that particular point in our lives. 1986, I was indicted and I came down there. It was interesting. It was a whole new world for me. I'd never been arrested before.
Really?
So I went big the first time. Conspiracy to commit murder, murder for hire.
And you were acquitted in that case.
I was acquitted in that case. We took it all the way. In 2011, I was indicted again. But just the circumstances and the way things were going, I didn't want to. I felt I could beat the case, but I dealt it out just because the dynamics had changed. My reputation was a lot more well-known then. And I had I don't know if you recall, I carried the torch in the Olympics.
I do, and that was in 84, right?
1984. Yeah, the ATF had made allegations we were going to support terrorists with weapons or whatnot. I never really got the whole story. And, our position was to support the Olympics. And if the ATF hadn't have started that rumor, we never would have even got involved. We had no interest in the Olympics. But, I, along with another member, felt we needed to make a statement. So that's how I wound up in Terminal Island.
And the government was upset with you after you did that.
They were very upset, as they were upset with you.
Okay. Well, I have to say, I had been arrested probably 17 times prior to that stint in Terminal Island. But I understand, George, I was on trial 5 times, and I beat them 5 times.
Right.
But the 6th time I said, my luck's going to run out.
Absolutely.
Even though they bring these crazy cases that they bring, but you got to spend millions of dollars, you got to spend all that time in fighting, and if you lose,
you're done.
You're done.
And this 2011, it finally was ready to go to trial in 2013, I believe, or 2014. My daughter was one of the lawyers representing me. My daughter had gone to law school and been working to protect me and other Hells Angels. But they didn't like the way things were going. I wouldn't work with them. And so they came with a superseding indictment. And in the superseding indictment, there were 3 mandatory minimums of life.
You don't want to roll the dice.
No, you can't roll the dice. They said, well, off 0 to 5, will you take a deal? And I did, and my daughter negotiated. I wound up going to Texas for a year.
Well, a lot of people don't understand that. You take a plea, you're automatically guilty. It's not always the case, but you got to cut your losses sometimes because, look, I say this, government doesn't always play fair. They got all the tools in their toolbox, and, to beat a federal case, extremely difficult.
It is, and they've got all the money.
They got all the money and all the time.
Yeah, and people go into the trial and you don't know what the jury's thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you get people in there. One of the things we asked was Sons of Anarchy was very popular at the time.
One of my daughter's favorite shows.
Sure, yeah, and
as a matter of fact, she named my grandson Jax.
Well, there you go. Yes. Now that shows you how popular.
Yeah, and I said to her, "Wait a second, what's the tradition? Your father, you're supposed to name him Michael." "No, Dad, Jax. That's it." She loved that show. Yeah, she loved it.
Well, one of the questions was, do you watch Sons of Anarchy? I came up with this voir dire questions, and the Judge Wu thought they were brilliant, and he was asking all the jurors himself,
Really?
Do you watch Sons of Anarchy? And if they answered yes, the next question was, do you believe the leader knows everything that everyone's doing? Because the allegation was I had ordered these guys to firebomb some tattoo shops, and on the contrary, I had told them stay away from the tattoo shops.
Right.
And I had one in mind that I was pretty sure the feds had installed cameras in there.
Really?
And I did go in there one day, and the day I went in there, the camera just didn't happen to be working.
Okay. That's a break.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think things are different now. I think people understand that sometimes law enforcement will go to great lengths to get people, and they'll break the law to enforce the law.
There's no question that they know that now, George. With all the stuff that's been going on, they don't play fair. We know that, and what bothers me is just don't weaponize the Department of Justice to go after people that you don't like.
Correct.
And that's what's happening a lot today. But that's a whole other issue.
It is another issue. It's not only a judicial issue; it's a political issue. And, I want to ask you, I've been wanting to ask you this for years. Now, when you disappeared out of Terminal Island, the urban legend in the prison was you were going, you said, I'm going to give you guys some money back.
Yeah.
And that never happened, right?
No, it didn't. And as a result, I wound up back in prison.
I know that.
No, but look, I was playing a game with them. I was trying to manipulate them, and it caught up to me. But, at the end of the day, it was okay. But, look, George, they claim that I have money buried everywhere, even till now.
I know that.
Even till now. I mean, they still bother me over it, believe it or not. And they won't believe it. I said, hey, it's been 25 years. Don't you think if the money was there, I would have made a run for it already? Franzese, you're smart, and we know that at some point in time, maybe it'll be for your kids. I hear all of that.
Do you think that they're consciously, watching you all the time? Or do you think they go, it seems to me they go through spurts. Somebody may,
absolutely.
An informant may say, hey, Christie's up to this again. I heard he's back in the game.
Absolutely, you nailed it. It goes in spurts like that. They're on you, and then people leave and they retire from the office. You don't hear anything. Then all of a sudden, boom, somebody says something, and it starts all over again. But I can't complain. Nobody's really bothered me, right. And
I'm with you. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I have friends in law enforcement now.
I do as well.
Why not keep those relationships, and that's it. But
right.
Yeah, let me ask you. You were in TI for a year. Were you on the North or the South Yard?
I was on the South Yard. Isn't that where they bring you in? The North Yard was like the penthouse.
No, it was the reverse.
The reverse, okay.
Yeah.
Because I had a member there whose name was Guy. He was a San Diego Hells Angel. He was a leader. And, this is also how things have changed. Now, he was there. He had pled guilty to machine gunning two rivals in another motorcycle club, and they both died. Barry Tarlow got him 4 years.
Barry, yeah, he was great.
Remember Barry?
He was
my
lawyer,
lawyer.
right? Yeah. He's the one that beat
that case.
The murder rap.
Yeah, he beat that case.
Good lawyer, yeah.
He, they had these devastating tapes of me, and everybody that listened to the tapes, oh my God, you're done. Barry Tarlow listens to them and goes, oh, I think I can beat this case.
Wow.
And I'm like, you do? Of course. We talked about how much it cost you. So, you figure in 1986, cost over $500,000.
Oh, yeah.
And to fight this case. And
Absolutely.
if you don't have that money, you can't go up against the big boys.
No.
You've got to have that money.
No, and my case has cost me millions of dollars, and when I think back, all the time and the effort. I mean, Cammie, my wife, she wasn't my wife back then. We had just gotten together. I'm on trial for several months. Rudy Giuliani put me on trial in that big racketeering case. I beat it, but at what cost? I mean, know.
Do you find it ironic now? Giuliani's kind of on the 180 of the spectrum.
I can't believe it, honestly. It's
some of the things he does. It just makes me wonder: is he?
My only feeling with that is, and
do you have animosity towards him?
I don't. Actually, I was on a radio show with him about a year ago.
Okay.
A good friend of mine says, Mike, I want to put you on the radio. And I said, yeah, let's go on. He says, one little caveat, Rudy's going to be on the other side of this with it. He said, do you mind? I said, hell no, I want to talk to him.
And
I
how
spent 30
was it?
years. It was great. You know what he said, George? And I have to say, he said, I'll tell you how far it went. He said, I've been watching you for 30 years. I tried to put you away for life, which is true. Told me he was going to give me 100 years at the day of my arraignment.
Right.
And he said, but I think your redemption is genuine. I've been watching you. He said, so I want to compliment you on it. I said, okay. So we got off to a good start. We finished that. Everything's great. And then I write this book, Mafia, Democracy, and my publisher says, hey, you think Rudy will write the foreword? I said, you know what, now you're pushing it a little bit. But I said, hey, I'm not shy, I'll ask him. I asked him, and he writes this here, tremendous foreword. See?
Wow.
Written by Rudy Giuliani.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Well,
he does a great job on it. So, you know what it is for me? I am, George, what's going on today, anybody that's involved with Trump, they demonize this. So I can't believe half the stuff they're saying. And I think a lot of stuff's going to come out about this guy, Biden. And again, without getting into politics, George, I got to tell you this. I had, we'll get into this a little bit, see your opinion. I don't know where you are politically, but that's okay. If he gets mad at me, people, it's all right. But listen, this Biden thing, he's being accused of having shell companies with approximately $20 million going into bank accounts owned by his family, right?
Right.
Fact. Suspicious bank records. He had 20 of these shell companies. I had 18 of them in the gas business. 18 shell companies. We didn't have a service. We didn't have a product. We did nothing. All it was collect illegal tax money that I was defrauding the government out of.
Right. You weren't paying them.
No, I wasn't paying. We were collecting the tax and defrauding them, not paying them. We figured out a scheme. 8 years I ran it, right? This is the exact same thing. There's more evidence against them with emails and text messages and everything else. All I had was a witness against me. They've got everything. It's an absolute racketeering indictment. I'm not going to say he's guilty yet because everybody deserves their day in court. But the evidence is, it's an indictment without a doubt. I'm very familiar. I had 3 RICO cases, so I understand how they work. But so what I'm saying is, obviously they don't want to indict the president. I don't think that's a good precedent anyway. But anybody involved with Trump, what they're doing to this guy and to everything, so that's why I don't trust anything at all.
Well, I'm not a big Trump fan, but I will tell you this. This last thing the judge found him guilty of, and they fined him $368 million. The thing that I find disgusting is that the banks got all their money back. He paid all the loans off. And, how many people inflate their property or their wealth?
Everybody.
Every day, somebody looking for a loan is going to inflate.
Business.
Absolutely. And there was no crime.
There was no crime.
He paid them back.
Paid them back, no victimless crime, and the bank said they work with him again.
Absolutely, I know that.
So how do you do this to somebody? It's insanity.
So, I have to say, in all fairness, I mean, he is getting
He's
pushed around.
You know what? And it doesn't even matter that it's Trump. It's anybody that they could do this to. It's just dangerous. And you and I, having a background, knowing how far that they can go, to let them go to this extent now is it's so dangerous.
No, I know. I had a 59 count state racketeering case in 2001, 2002, and they just threw everything against the wall, thinking ultimately something would stick. And my ex-wife at the time was indicted. My oldest son was indicted. in an effort to get me to make some sort of plea. And are you familiar with Tony Serra? He's a Bay Area lawyer. He did a lot of stuff in the 60s and 70s.
Know the name, yes.
He came in and was fighting the criminal case, and Barry Tarlow was fighting the bail. I mean, they wouldn't let me bail, and that was the wedge. We'll put the wedge on him. He's got to stay in jail. He can't fight this on the street.
The same.
Yeah, same kind of deal. And Tarlow got me bail, and as soon as I got bail, they asked me, "Will you take time served?"
Wow.
So, what do you do? And, people jumped on me about that in my own organization at that time. They go, "You made a deal." And, well, you're looking at
What's wrong with that?
100 years, if they offer you time served, you take the deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's logic. But,
George, this last case that I took a plea on, I had been to trial 5 times. I never, ever was even 5 minutes late to court. Never. Faced a jury where I was going to get 100 years if I got convicted on the Giuliani case. Faced tons of time, never missed a court date, never was even 5 minutes late. Anytime I got arrested, I showed up. So now this case, because I beat them so many times, they hold me without bail. Now this was a fraud case. There was no violence in the case at all, right? Defrauding the government. So, the 2 conditions they can hold you without bail is, number 1, you're a danger to the community. They couldn't prove that in the basis of my indictment. And number 2, you're a flight risk. Well, they could never say I was a flight risk. I always show up. They couldn't say I was a danger to the community. So you know what? They created a new statute. They said he's an economic danger to the community.
I've never heard that one.
Never heard it. And you never heard it again?
No, I've never heard
Just that one time.
And I follow all this legal stuff. I constantly listening to legal podcasts. My daughter's a criminal lawyer, constantly talking to her about things and if we should have did this and should we have done that. Second guessing myself even years later. But it's
they do what they want.
Yeah, they do what they want.
It's terrible.
What's the conviction rate? 98?
96, 97%.
Yeah, I mean, it's outrageous.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so George, you have a very colorful background, to say the least. But I'm interested in something, and I want to get into a discussion about it. About a year and a half ago, somebody wrote an article about the Hells Angels. Okay. I thought it was very interesting. And in comparison to my former life, because I don't like to use the word mafia, Cosa Nostra is what we call it here. And as I was reading what the rules or the policies are for Hells Angels, I was comparing it to, what we went through in my former life. So I want to, if you're okay with that, because that was just an article. I want to hear it from you.
Well,
and I want to say this.
Question number 1, what do you want to know?
Okay, here's the thing. When I got involved in the life and I took an oath, Halloween night, 1975, it was a blood oath where I surrendered my life to Cosa Nostra. Sure. Told, this life comes before anything. If your mother is sick and dying, you're at her bedside, we call you to service, you leave your mother, you come and serve us. We're number 1 before anything and everything. And idealistically, that's what I felt about the life. I mean, it was important to me. I had a very idealistic view. I was going to be part of something my dad was part of. It really meant a lot to me. How did you have that same feeling, that same brotherhood, that same feeling with the Hells Angels?
Absolutely. And I've talked about it recently. I've talked about it in the past. Old Man John.
And you were the head of the chapter, weren't you?
Well,
you were the boss.
I was a young guy in Los Angeles. There was a leader down there called Old Man John. He was one of the old timers. Mm-hmm. He was a boss. Had a lot of influence in Southern California, and he took a liking to me. And the night I got inducted into the club, standing outside, and by the fire, it was warm. I mean, cold. I was trying to warm up.
Do me a favor. Tell us about the induction ceremony.
Well, that's what I'm going to tell you. Old Man John opened the door. He yelled. He had a real gruff voice. He said, "Christie, get your ass in there!" And all the prospects looked at each other, and I knew. I go, this is it. And I ran to the front door. I went in, and inside the room is the meeting room, and it's lined with Hells Angels, and everybody's sizing me up.
Could anybody attend as long as you're an angel?
You had to be an angel.
Okay.
So I've got these guys in there, their backs against the wall, and Old Man John asked me. He said, "Are you ready?" And I barely could say anything. I mean, that's how excited I was. I mean, I was just, You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I finally squeaked out yeah. And he said, we come first before your father, your mother. And he went right down the line, talked about all the family members. And then at the end, he said, do you understand? And I said to him, yes. And he goes, you don't understand anything yet.
Really?
And but I was in. He goes, okay. And he told one of the guys, he goes, throw him the patch. And they threw me the patch, and I caught it, and I opened it up and extended my arms, and that was the death head, and it was staring at me. And it really looked like it was following me. I was kind of looking at it. I was looking around the room, and then the old man says, well, put it on, and I put it on, and I was watching myself. This may sound corny or romantic to some people, but I was watching myself in kind of an image in the window. It wasn't a mirror, but it was the window, and I could see my reflection. And I felt I made this transition that night as soon as I put that patch on. And I'm sure when you got inducted into the...
and that patch is everything, right?
It's everything.
For Hell's Angel,
it's everything. It's his soul, It's now his soul. And, I didn't know any mob guys till I went to prison. And then, I met Rosario, we used to eat with, and these different individuals, and I started seeing a lot of parallels as we'd sit around, and I don't know if you remember, I worked in the kosher kitchen with Sal. I don't know if
with Rosario, yeah, he was in the kitchen.
We
Right?
were in the kosher kitchen.
That's why we ate a little better. He used to bring stuff back to my cell.
That's right. And he used to go upstairs, and we didn't have it like in Goodfellas where they had the stuff on ice. But he would go upstairs and he would get the different things and make the different sauces.
I was so mad at Rosario because I never drank soda, and he got me hooked on Diet
soda.
Coke. That
Coke.
is addictive. He used to bring all the guys. Sal, why are you starting with me?
I got off track, but absolutely. Your whole life is dedicated to the organization. I got a question for you. Like, I get asked all the time, is the Hells Angels a criminal organization? And my response to people when they ask me that is, it's not a criminal organization. It didn't start out as a criminal organization, but there are a lot of opportunities, and it's an organization that now has criminals in it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Sounds hypocritical, or, when people understand, like you guys didn't wear jackets, but everybody knew.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it opens a lot of doors, and it's like a carte blanche card.
Absolutely, and just to follow that up, the night I took an oath, we didn't take an oath to rob, steal, murder, kill. That wasn't the oath.
It was oath to each other.
That wasn't the oath at all. We take an oath of omerta, which means silence.
Correct.
And you're not even supposed to admit that we exist. When you take that oath, are you saying, okay, I'm becoming a criminal now? No. But do you do criminal activity as a result of being part of that life? Yes. Which brings me to my next question. I was a recruit. The day that my dad proposed me for membership, because I'm sure it's similar with the Hells Angels. You just can't go up to an angel and say...
Well, I proposed my son.
Yeah, you say...
Georgie.
You can't go up to somebody and say, I'd like to join. Somebody has to propose you, vouch for you. You have what it takes.
Absolutely.
In my case, was my dad. And then when I sat with my boss at the time, he said to me, your dad has proposed you into this life. Is this what you want? I said, yes. He said, here's the deal. From now on, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're on call to serve this family. And he ran that down, and he said, but you're going to have to prove yourself. He said, when and if we think you deserve or you're worthy to become a member, we'll let you know. So for the next 2.5 years, I was a recruit. I had to do anything and everything I was told to do to prove myself worthy.
Hang around period in the Hells Angels, then a prospective period. And then even as a new member.
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Okay, you may hit me back with this. What did you have to do to prove yourself worthy?
Certainly, I had to gain everybody's trust, and there were some things that I did that I probably wouldn't do again at this point in my life so I'll ask you the same thing.
We have the same answer, George.
Okay.
You know, listen, you know.
We're not fools.
No.
Okay.
You know, and when you reach that point, they say, okay, you know.
This guy's. And we had a term especially in our little region, Ventura, Los Angeles and Ventura, was a gentleman named David Ortega. I used to call him David O. He was kind of he was a couple of years older, but, you know, I was the boss, but he's the guy I went to.
Like your consigliere.
Absolutely. I went and bounced stuff off of him. I said, what do you think about this, David? What do you think of this guy? And, you know, I've got a couple of funny stories about him. If you were okay, he'd call you a regular. The guy's a regular. I go, what do you think of this guy? You know, he goes, oh, he's a regular. You know, and that was the highest endorsement you could get in that outlaw bike culture at that time. And we had another guy that ultimately became a government informant, a gentleman named Tony Tate. Heard a lot of guys. And the same guy went to David. I didn't like this guy, and he'd been getting high marks from a lot of the guys. I went to David, and I said, what do you think? And he goes, I don't like the guy. And we could never put a finger on it, so to speak. And finally, David told me, he goes, you know what? I don't like the way he parts his hair. You know, just an old school guy that, you know, and we talked about your father earlier off camera, I think it was. That's the way David was. He's just this old school guy that had their ideals. And he was in a motorcycle club. He was in the Question Marks Motorcycle Club when I was in high school. You know, so he not only later became a Hell's Angel, but I mean, this guy, you know, had a long tenure as a 1% outlaw biker. So yeah, you know, they expect total dedication. You know. Let me
say this. You know, again, getting back to the question, did I consider the Cosa Nostra a criminal organization? Well, we don't come in saying we're a brotherhood.
Right.
We have each other's back. You know, we're a brotherhood. And like my dad would tell me, we didn't like law enforcement at all. My dad told me, he drilled this into my head from the time I was a kid. Mike, you can never be a cop. He said, because a cop takes an oath to lock up their own mother and father if they were to commit a crime. How could you ever be like that? I said, I could never do that, you know? So he put that in my head right away. And so we automatically don't like the police. We automatically didn't mind committing crime. So okay, we didn't call ourselves a criminal organization, but we were criminals.
Right.
So I think it sounds, again, and I don't know exactly.
No, you're absolutely right. You're not putting words in my mouth. I mean, you're absolutely right, Michael. You know what's also interesting for me? I came from, all my family, both sides came from Greece. And when they got here, you know, they made their way, they came, you know, New York, and then they made their way west, wound up in Ventura. But as an Italian, maybe you can relate to this, kind of kept to themselves.
Yes.
They didn't trust the cops. You know, I'll tell you a funny story. In 2001, when I got that indictment, one of the houses they raided when they were trying to put the case together was my mother's. And I can't remember if it was 15,000 or 1,500. We talked earlier about the memories, you know.
Senior moments.
Yeah, so it was cash. It was either 1,500 or 15,000. It was hidden in her mattress. She was still hiding money in her mattress because they didn't trust the banks, you know.
No, I get it. And let me ask you this. Some of the myths that maybe we can talk about, and one of them is this. When I got into the life, the night I took the oath, we went to have dinner afterwards, right? We have a banquet. All the Italians always eat, right? Wine, food, the whole bit. And one of the soldiers came in, which is an official position. That's the bottom ranking of that life after you take the oath. Comes in with a brown paper bag. And he says, hey, boss, should I give all the new guys their bag of money now? You know, the irony being, you think you come into that life and everybody's making you rich when it's the other way around. You got to be paying up.
Right.
So people think that. And I will tell you this. When I went to prison, I didn't get a quarter from anybody. My dad went away. He didn't get a dime from anybody. He had a couple of things going on the street, Shylock money, this. When that ran out, that was it.
Right.
So isn't that life takes care of you? I want to know if it's the same with the Hells Angels.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we were supposed to get $60 a month.
Really?
$60
like a stipend?
You know, sent to the prisons. And I'll tell you, you're lucky if you could get that some of the months. You know, you could call home, where's my damn money? You know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's similar. You know, it's interesting. You guys, you got inducted, you went out to dinner. You know, I got inducted in the club that night, or voted in, or however you want to describe it. We jumped on our motorcycles and rode San Bernardino to a little old lady's house named Betty. She used to make our patches. And I actually rode out there. Betty sewed my patch, my personal patch, on my jacket. So it was, you know, it was just...
Is that the normal routine?
Well, you know, maybe if I was treated a little bit special because old man John liked me, as you probably, you know. It cuts both ways, though.
Yes.
You get people that get jealous. You got other people
absolutely.
that put their arm around you. They go, oh, if old man John likes you, you got to be all right.
Yeah.
So it cuts both ways. But, you know, the interesting thing is, went to Betty. She was a religious woman. And you couldn't smoke in there. You couldn't cuss. And when you leave, no hot rodding down the street. That was the 3 rules. And
Interesting.
I just thought it was really funny. So I went to Purdue. Betty sewed my patch on my jacket, and it was like a big deal, you know.
I could imagine.
Yeah, it was huge.
Let me ask you, you're of Greek ethnic background.
Yes.
Do you have to be of any ethnic background to be a Hells Angels, or anything else?
Well, you know, it's interesting. There was a rumor that the motorcycle club that we've been at odds with for 30-some years, the Mongols, was started because we didn't allow Hispanics into the Hells Angels. Well, David Ortega was my right-hand man. You know, he's as Hispanic as you get. So, you know, there's myths and there's ideas. But I will tell you this, and it's the truth. There were blacks in the Hells Angels at one time. There are no blacks in the Hells Angels. And what happened was, along with the women members, they got pushed out. And when Hells Angels started getting attention of law enforcement and going to prison, the Hells Angels took on the prison political color lines. The whites stick with the whites, the Mexicans stick with the Mexicans, the blacks stick with the blacks. And of course we got painted with you know, racist brush. These guys are racist. And, you know, we used to go party at the East Bay Dragons clubhouse. Sonny Barger, who I had a long time relationship with. It was a love-hate type relationship. He was my senior, very powerful guy in the club. He would go hang out at the East Bay Dragons. They were from Oakland. So, you know, were people prejudiced? I didn't get that vibe, but we did have the political prison color lines that we adhered to.
Well, for us, your father had to be Italian.
Right.
That's it. Your father
Now,
wasn't
not
Italian.
your mother, but your father.
Father had to be Italian.
Was it that way always? I was told that initially it was
Both.
They both did.
Yes, both, and then they relaxed it to just your father. From what I understand, it might have gone back for security reasons now to mom and dad. I haven't verified that, but that's what I heard. Both have to be Italian.
Right.
But you just said something I don't want to overlook. Women can be involved in the club?
They were at one time. There's famous, maybe, well, there's 2 of them that were very famous. It was Garbage Head, who actually had the tattoo, the small death head. That was the first death head, and then, you know, we made a transition to a different style. She had the tattoo, the small death head on her back, and there was another woman called Mother Ruth, and she got that name Mother Ruth because she liked the little younger guys that would come around the club.
Interesting.
But yeah, there were women in the club.
Wow. Well, let me clarify this. No women in Cosa Nostra in America, at least not till today. As
Not
far
even
as
when
I
their
know.
husbands go to jail.
No, but in Italy, yes.
That's what I
In Italy,
understood.
yes. Mafia, yes. But here, no women. But I have to say something else. Okay, you're the boss. I'm a biker now. I'm accepted, standard or whatever. I come to you, hey boss, I got a drug deal. I want to rob the bank, or I want to rob the government out of X amount of dollars. Am I okay to do that?
Well, you know, I would probably immediately think, is this guy recording me?
Okay.
I have a very paranoid personality, but I would probably say, from a leader and a political and whatever standpoint, if you want to go out and do that stuff, don't involve me, don't involve the club. You know, we have a very strict rule.
That's interesting.
That there was a guy sitting in a meeting next to me. He had a cast on. Well, inside the cast was a bug. And he came to the meeting and he wanted it was full of presidents, the meeting room. There's probably 15, 20 presidents in there. And he wanted permission to blow up the outlaws in Kentucky. He specifically, wanted to go after those guys. And we are not allowed to talk about anything like that in a meeting. No criminal activity can be brought
That's
up
interesting.
in the meetings.
No, we differed quite a bit in that regard.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, my boss would have said to me, no drugs. We weren't allowed to deal with drugs. You deal with drugs, you die in that life.
Right.
But anything else, if he would have approved, as long as I get a kickback.
What can I make out of it?
That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
25% goes up the top.
And I think that, we had a slogan in the club. It was a sarcastic position we took. I don't know what year it was. It was the early 80s, but the organized crime list came out. And, of course, Cosa Nostra number 1, and the Hells Angels were number 2 at this particular time. Now, I don't know who made this up, if somebody sat behind a desk in Washington, but they had said, now, these guys are becoming the Mafia on wheels. I don't know if you've ever heard that
Yeah,
before.
well, the thought process was it was a criminal organization, just did things differently.
Right.
I always thought that. But now some of the things you're telling me, I don't think so.
No, it was an organization established for motorcycling, brotherhood, but when you start getting all this police pressure and, you've got a job, I'll give you a perfect example. I got a guy, joins my crew in Ventura. He's a young guy, maybe when I say young, in his late 20s, early 30s. He's got a regular job. He's a truck driver for a company, a distributor. He's distributing stuff, driving around. And the intelligence unit goes to his boss. Did you know so-and-so is doing this? And he's involved with these guys, and we suspect this is going on. He got fired, and that happened a lot to us. And, what does the guy do? He resorts to his wits on the street. He's got to make ends meet. He's got a family he's got to provide for. He's got kids and a wife and whatnot. So is it his fault? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, because he consciously makes a decision. I can't make it here, but I can make it over here because I got some opportunities. I had some brothers over here that said this, and I think that it creates, in a sense, just the machine, the way it is. It eats itself up. It creates somebody that may turn to criminal activity.
Well, let me ask you this, because you said when you were inducted, I'll use that word, they said the Hells Angels comes before anything and anybody.
Absolutely.
Mother, father.
Right.
So what does that mean? How would it come before your mother or father? Give me an example of that.
Well, I think you gave the perfect example earlier. I'm at the hospital with my mom or dad, and they're dying. And, old man John calls me and says, get your ass down here. One time he called me down there. I'll tell you an interesting story. I walked into a room of guys talking. And, some people out there may go, oh, Jesus, man, he just said they weren't a criminal organization, but yet this is transpiring. I walk into this room, and there's these guys in there, and they're talking about blowing these other guys up. So I just stop immediately. I just come out of the military. I worked for the Department of Defense at the time. My tenure with them ended when they found out I was leader of the Los Angeles Hells Angels. They threatened to take away my top security clearance and whatnot. But anyways, I
can almost understand that.
Really. So I walk into this room, and these are guys, this small group of guys are very energetic, down for the cause, and they want to blow these guys up. And then I start questioning them. I go, that's dangerous. If you thought about collateral damage, they were like, what's collateral damage?
Right.
And I go, the innocent people around when you blow these guys up.
Sure.
So I left. They went ahead, built the bomb, put it at this motorcycle place, and it didn't go off. And because I had complained and I said I wouldn't participate, some of them went to John and said, hey, this guy might not be no good. He wouldn't get involved with us. So what do I have to do? I've got to go recover the bomb. And that's what I did. I went and recovered the bomb that didn't
So
explode.
that you were ordered? So
I was ordered by John to go recover the bomb. I said, why me? I didn't place it there. We got to make sure you're okay. There's people that are starting to doubt because you complained, George.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure, and as time passed, and I'm sure they did this to you guys, they create doubt, the cops, of is this guy any good? Is that guy any good?
Yeah, they try to plant stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Any tactic that they could use.